Hi, hello and welcome everybody. This is going to be our first lecture on our unit on Islam, Byzantium, and Japan. You're going to be responsible for most of the Byzantium information on your own. So that's the worksheet that we worked on in class, as well as the video we saw on Hagia Sophia and Constantinople. So you're responsible for that information. What we're going to start with today is our study of the religion of Islam and the Muslim world from about 600 to 1250 AD. Now, what we see when we're talking about in terms of the Earth, we're starting in the Middle East, particularly on the Arabian Peninsula. And this is a peninsula of deserts, towns, and trade routes, because the Arabian Peninsula is really a crossroads of three continents. You've got people coming south from Europe, going east from Africa, and west from Asia. So we see a lot of different stuff that were going on, particularly in uh, this peninsula, but really there's only a tiny strip in the south that's suitable for farming because you know that most of, if you picture Saudi Arabia today, is desert. So just a tiny strip in the south of the peninsula, it really can do any farming. The rest is mountainous, rocky, and very much a desert. Now, this desert is inhabited by a group of nomadic peoples who are pretty much going to be moving herds of livestock from one part of the peninsula to another. These people are known as the Bedouins. They're going to organize themselves roughly into clans based on familial ties. So you'll have, again, larger groups, but they'll be mostly organized. They're related cousins, second cousins, third cousins. Everybody kind of knows each other, and so it's think of it more as almost different families moving around in there. And again, we're not talking about a very large population because it's hard to live in the deserts. So what we see over time is that by the time we get to the 600s ADs, and we're skipping a lot here, I know, is that any Arabic people that have moved away from becoming nomads have chosen to settle around oases or market towns. And these oases are pretty much, again, what you think of as an oasis in the desert we see from cartoons, where it's a watering hole, water in the desert, which makes sense to then go and settle. You can do a little bit of farming, you can water your livestock there, or at market towns. And these market towns are going to be set up at those crossroads that are crisscrossing the peninsula. And so as those trade routes begin to become more developed, as we see more goods and ideas moving from the Roman Empire into China and from China and India eastward and westwards, we'll begin to see that the Arabian Peninsula becomes very much this network of crossroads and trade routes that are setting up and allowing people to trade and not only exchange goods but also ideas. One of these trade towns is the town of Mecca, and Mecca is southeastern or southwestern, Saudi Arabia, and that's going to contain the Kaaba or the Kaaba, which is an ancient shrine. And this is going to become very central to the early polytheistic religion that's going to develop in this part of the Arabian Peninsula. What we see is that it's again very on different sources of how it comes into being. Very much could just be a meteorite that landed in the desert. Is other interpretations that this is a rock that was the spot where Adam was cast out from the Garden of Eden in. So again, different interpretations, but we see is that we have a religion. It's centered around this particular shrine in the town of Mecca for the kind of smaller polytheistic religion that we have here. And what we see is that the people of Saudi Arabia are going to be familiar with monotheism and a belief in Allah or God from their contact with Christians and Jews. We're 600 AD, so if you got your timeline in order, this is 600 years or so after Jesus. Judaism has been religion in the area for a couple thousand years by this point. So there's polytheistic religions in Saudi Arabia, but there's also, again, with context from their trading, a lot of these ideas of monotheism with the connections with the Christians and Jews that are happening in the area. So just a modern map of what we're talking about here with the modern Arabian Peninsula. Saudi Arabia is the big country that takes up most of the peninsula. Again, after the Saud family, who again we're getting farther into world history when we get into, let's say, the 1940s, 1930s. But they're going to be so proud of themselves. They're going to name the whole peninsula after their own family. You've got Yemen in the south, Oman in the southeast, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, and then towards the top we get our other Middle Eastern countries of Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Israel. So that's kind of a modern view of the peninsula. These are some Bedouins. This is taken in the early 20th century, but again, this would not be out of place. These people and their way of life from 1,000 years before, just because of how hard it is to live and work in the desert. And again, these people are making a living by doing a little bit of farming in the south, but also by, again, being traders, moving livestock, moving animals, moving goods from the east in China to the west in the Roman Empire, from Africa, and then up and down the peninsula. Again, we want to stress that there is a ton of desert in here. You literally, again, have an empty quarter is the name for a quarter of the peninsula that is just one big giant, very harsh conditions to be able to try to live in Saudi Arabia. So you can see how the different cross sections of the peninsula have all those roads on them. This is the Kaaba. And so again, this is kind of central to Islam today, but gets its start in the polytheistic religions early on. And this is, again, a shrine that's been around for a long time. This is a picture from 1887 where you can see the shrine there in the center of Mecca. And as we get to a more modern picture, you can kind of see how it's being built up. There's a lot to do with more of the socio-economical, political things that have been going on in the last, say, 30 years, but we can kind of see that this is still something that's ingrained into the traditions dating all the way back several thousand years. So getting into the religion themselves, what we see here is around the early 600s, a 40-year-old trader named Muhammad receives a vision of a visit from the angel Gabriel. And you know from your theology classes that Gabriel's the angel who's the voice of God, right? Comes down from the heavens, finds Muhammad, and he delivers Muhammad the message that God, or Allah in Arabic, has told Gabriel to tell Muhammad that he's the last of the prophets. So again, you see the prophets from the Old Testament, and then again, you can, if you want to consider Jesus and his disciples as prophets as well, that there's not going to be any more. It's just going to be Muhammad. He's the end of the line, and Gabriel is telling Muhammad that there are no other gods but the God, capital G, Allah. And so Muhammad is then going to take this message and then begin to share his not only interpretation of this message, but this message with other people and form the religion that will become called Islam. So Islam is the name of the religion. It means the submission to the will of Allah. So again, someone who's submitted themselves to this will. A person who practices the religion of Islam is a Muslim. So a Christian is someone who practices the religion of Christianity. A Jewish person is someone who practices the religion of Judaism. A Muslim is someone who practices the religion of Islam. So that's kind of how we go with the different terminology there. So that's the religion that Muhammad is going to try to start to spread in and around Mecca. Doesn't go very well in Mecca. Doesn't get a whole lot of converts. Leaves to go north to the town of Medina. There in Medina, he begins to preach his message, and people begin to like what he's saying, begin to understand what his vision, begin to join up, say, I'd like to subscribe to your newsletter. And so he then helps become the religious, political, and military leader of this community. So the people in Medina begin to follow Muhammad, who then begins to gather more, again, more political and military power around him. And then he returns to Mecca in the year 630 with 10,000 followers, and they go, after some short skirmishes, take the city. They storm into the Kaaba, destroy many of the pagan idols that are there, and then begin to rework the shrine as something that is central to the again, Judeo-Christian is Islamic tradition, as well as getting rid of any remnants of the polytheism religion that's been there, to make it very much central to the idea of the Islamic religion. So again, just a little picture here. You can kind of see the followers of Muhammad as he's beginning to go literally on the warpath to pave the way and spread the religion of Islam. We talk about the central ideas already in the class of what's the basic ideas of Judaism. We've talked about Christianity. We've talked about um, Taoism, Confucianism, other different things. So with Islam, you can very much simplify the religion to what are called the 5 pillars of Islam. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on your study guide. So pillar number 1 is faith. So the first pillar is faith, and this is a central fundamental statement to a Muslim person. This is the fundamental tenet of what it means to be a practitioner of the Islamic religion. Just like how we have our Nicene Creed in Christianity and Catholicism, there's this statement of faith in Islam, that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. And again, that's a fundamental, basic pillar of the religion. That's what everything is built upon. It's built out there. Second pillar is one of prayer. Islam requires Muslims to pray 5 times a day. The nice thing about prayer is kind of, again, what you're thinking about with Christianity or Judaism. You can pray to Allah anywhere. However, you do have to face Mecca, and there's a little bit more. It's not just so much you have that personal relationship with God in Christianity. In Islam, you have to go and bow down. You're going and doing that. You have to go and face Mecca. So and where I'm at here in Joliet Catholic, you'd have to go face east, which is behind me. All right, to be able to go and do that. The people know, particularly throughout the Middle East, they're called to prayer. And so you'll have people who go up in big giant minarets throughout most of Muslim towns throughout the world, and particularly in the Middle East. They'll go up there, big giant megaphone, give a call to prayer. Everyone will then either stop what they're doing and go into their house, or work their way to a mosque to be able to pray. But again, you don't have to go to any religious building. You can do it wherever you want. You can just stop and go and do your prayers for that particular time of day. Third prayer is alms. Muslims feel they have the responsibility to help the less fortunate. So it's the giving of not only their time, but of their wealth, of their skills, to be able to help out people who are less fortunate of them. You can kind of compare and contrast with what we know of in Catholicism. Pillar number 4 is fasting. And so, again, we can make a comparison to maybe what goes on during Lent in the Catholic season. But fasting happens during the month of Ramadan. Now, this is a month because the Islamic calendar is based on the lunar calendar. It's not lined up perfectly with more, say, the Western Gregorian calendar that's based more on the movements of the sun. So what we'll see with the month of Ramadan, it will move throughout the Western or, again, Gregorian calendar. So it's not just this month every single year. It's going to kind of move, particularly for us here in Joliet in the United States. But basically, this is a month, and what you're trying to do is trying to show that your spirit is greater and stronger than your body. So you're willing to go and put yourself through some discomfort to be able to go and show kind of, again, your submission to Allah, that you're willing to go and make yourself not, again, quote unquote, suffer, to be able to, again, prove your willingness to be a part of this religion. So basically, you're fasting from sunup to sundown every single day. You're making sure you're only allowed to eat or drink certain things during that time period to be able to do that. But again, it's basically you wanted to not eat for the entire time the sun is up. So again, as that moves through the day, particularly say in the United States, it's going to be a lot harder to do in the summertime when the days are longer, going to be a little bit easier during the wintertime when the days are shorter. But again, that's kind of you're showing your willingness to be able to put your spirit, put your soul ahead of what your body kind of needs and demands. And then you have a big giant celebration at the end of Ramadan to kind of celebrate working your way through that month. The last major pillar is one of pilgrimage, and the specific pilgrimage that Muslims go on is what is called the Hajj. You're required to go as many times as you can. If you're a very rich person and you live in Joliet and you can't afford to, you're supposed to be going on the Hajj every single year. If you're the less fortunate, you should try to make every effort to try to go at least once in your life as a pilgrimage to Mecca, to see where Muhammad walked, to see where he proselytized, to be able to go and walk around the Kaaba and take that in. And so that is the fifth pillar. And again, that's the Hajj, to be able to do that at least once in your life, to be able to go to the Mecca, to Mecca. Now, how do you know all this? Luckily, all this is written down for us in the holy book called the Quran, and sometimes that's spelled with a Koran. And again, so the holy book of Islam is the Quran. Now, what's very specific about the Quran is that this is Muhammad's revelations from God that he received through the angel Gabriel. So kind of God is speaking through Gabriel to Muhammad onto the page. So those words on that page in the Quran are God's words. So this is a very holy book in the eyes of the Islamic religion. And again, it's God incarnate on that page. Now, can you find a Quran in all the languages of the earth? Most definitely can find a very easy Google search to find a Quran translation in English. But your kind of quote unquote true Qurans are supposed to be written in Arabic. And so that's the language that Muhammad heard God in there. So you're only supposed to write in Arabic, and therefore you're only supposed to worship in Arabic. And so what we see this is that as we combine this writing the Quran in Arabic, worshiping in Arabic, is that the effect of the spread of Islam is going to spread the Arabic language throughout, again, really, if you global context here in 2023, the world, but very much spread Arabic with the Muslim conquest that we'll begin to see on the next couple of slides. So again, hints, winks, and nudges. Because the Quran is written in Arabic, you're really only supposed to worship in Arabic. The effect is the spread of Arabic with Islam as the Muslims begin to conquer territory. There's no real priests, what you say, or central religious authority. Anybody who studies the Quran and reads it can be one who can preach the message of the book. There are people who devote more of their time and more in their effort, who become more of an authority on there, but there really is no hierarchical authority that, again, you want to compare maybe this to Catholicism. There's no central person like a pope. There's no priest. Anybody can kind of go and be one to give you advice on your faith or help you out in this religion. So again, just to review, those 5 pillars of Islam are faith, prayer, almsgiving, fasting during the month of Ramadan, and again, the pilgrimage to the holy site in Mecca. So again, this slide is showing a review of those 5 different pillars. The Quran, again, you can get it in all sorts of translations. We can get an English translation if you want, very easily. Very heavily illustrated. A lot of these, we can make these comparisons between the illuminated manuscripts that we'll see being written by monks and nuns and priests in Catholicism during the Middle Ages, and we'll see the same thing happening with the Islamic religion during the same time period. The Hajj is going to look like, again, you're going to have, think about if every Muslim on the earth is trying to go to Mecca all at once, you can think about the sheer volume of people and logistics you need there. No, this is not snow covering the ground here in Mecca and Saudi Arabia. Those are all pilgrims. And again, the traditional Islamic pilgrim color is white. So you're going there. It kind of goes all the way out. If you see to the left, you're circling the Kaaba, you're doing that, and then you're going in there, you're touching it, you're experiencing something that, again, has been going on for a very long time. This is the pilgrimage to Mecca here in 1887. You can see all the tents that are set up for the people outside of Mecca to go in there. And this is what the tents, quote unquote, look like in 2015. You can see the big giant hotel off in the left there. So the scale of this has obviously increased. So to get back to the history, this Muhammad has taken over Mecca. He has begun to go and spread the religion throughout the rest of the Saudi peninsula. When he goes, and one interpretation is that he dies and passes away. Another interpretation is that he goes to Jerusalem, and there he goes and he is ascends into heaven from a rock there, and Muslims are going to build a giant mosque, the Dome of the Rock, surrounding that place in Jerusalem where Muhammad has ascended to heaven. So Muhammad has either, again, died or gone to heaven. And so he is then succeeded by four caliphs. Caliph in Arabic translates to successor or deputy. The key part about this is that all four of these caliphs knew him, listened to him speak, were a part of his inner circle, were related to him. And so that's going to come up later in here. And it's these caliphs that are going to help spread this religion not only through the rest of Saudi Arabia, but again throughout the Middle East, Near East, Far East, west into Africa, and then up into the Mediterranean. By the time we get to 750 AD, so again, we've gone from just a little bit over 100 years, the Muslim Empire is going to stretch 6,000 miles from the Atlantic Ocean in Spain and Morocco in North Africa in the west, all the way to the Indus River Valley in modern day India, Pakistan in the east. So this is a giant set of conquests that they're able to do that. So obviously the question becomes, why were these Muslims armies so successful? What makes them to be able in this short amount of time go from being just in a small town of Mecca in the Arabian Peninsula to covering 6,000 miles? Well, first, and again, this kind of makes, they're fueled and motivated by the desire to spread Islam. But again, we've seen other groups that are just as fueled, just as motivated to spread their message. So that, again, is a very much driving force, but there's other factors, more important factors at play. One, they're very well disciplined and well commanded. The Bedouin clans have been warring in the Arabian Peninsula for generations. And so what the religion of Islam is able to do is to be able to take these warlike people who don't get along very well, give them something that they all can agree upon, the religion of Islam, and then be able to turn that militancy that they have in their culture outwards to go and spread the religion. So they're very well disciplined, very well commanded. Another reason they're so successful is the weaknesses of the empires that surround them. The Byzantine Empire is going through a time of reorganization and kind of splintering, so they're not doing very well. The Sassanid Empire, and again, this is going all the way back to the breakup of the Roman Empire in the west, as well as the remnants of the Sassanid Empire left by the Alexander the Great's generals that take over the empire in what we consider the modern Middle East. So those empires are kind of fractured, they're breaking up, which allows the Muslim armies to be able to sweep through. And then the third thing is just the toleration of Muslim rule. What's going to make some people be willing to accept Muslim rule is they're tolerant towards other people. They're not really looking to go and murder you. They would very much like and encourage you to be able to join the religion, but it's not a requirement. Any Jews or Christians or people of other religions that were taken over by the Muslim armies were required to pay a very nominal tax, like again, think of like $1 a year, just to show that again you're submitting to the rule of the Muslims. But you're able to kind of have your own courts, your own almost laws, as long as it doesn't run too much counter to the ruling Muslims. But again, you're able to have your own religion, and as long as you're not standing on a soapbox and proselytizing and spreading your message, you can still have your own churches, have your own synagogues, do whatever you want. Muslims are tolerant of other religions in their rule, which is going to let people very much allow themselves to be ruled by them. So what we'll see here in the next is you can kind of see the spread and expansion of Muslim rule. You can kind of see here in this GIF as we see the religion spread from Mecca across the Saudi Arabian peninsula, and then as we start to move up through Mesopotamia, the modern Middle East, and then work its way through the Byzantine Empire across Africa to the west and across modern day Iran and eastwards towards India, as again they start to be able to go and do that. Remember, a lot of these areas are sparsely populated, so they're just working through the population centers that we see there. So as we begin to move through our history of, particularly the early history of Islam, we begin to run into the problem that we also saw in Christianity, that we see in other religions. What starts to happen over time as you move farther and farther away from the original founder's message, that founder is no longer there and you just have his words, that person, that founder is no longer able to explain what they mean, what this particular quote, what the backing of that. So as we move away from Muhammad's time on earth and we begin to see those caliphs who knew him also start to pass away, disagreements begin to develop in the Islamic world over who should become the next caliph, who should succeed the next one. By the time we get into 656 through 661, we see a major disagreement of whether the governor of Syria should be the next caliph or Ali should be the next caliph. And Ali, importantly, is a cousin of Muhammad. So this is a blood relative of Muhammad. So very much, should it just be a powerful political leader who should be the next caliph, or should it be a direct blood relative of Muhammad? And that's the question that we see here. Now, the governor of Syria comes from it's called the Umayyad family, and the Umayyad family is politically and military powerful, and so they are asking to become the caliphs just based on their power that they have in there. They're going to move the capital of the Muslim world from Mecca on the Arabian Peninsula to the city of Damascus, to be able to use, and again, Damascus has been around since, before the Greeks and the Romans. This is going all the way back to our earlier studies in Mesopotamia, a major city on major trade routes, but much more connected to the Silk Road going east and the Mediterranean trading networks in there. Now, the Umayyad family begins to very much take on a life of luxury and privilege based on, again, their economic, their political, and military power, which is going to rub some people some long way. Again, we have to remember that this is a early religion of Muhammad as a Bedouin, as a tribal person, scratching out their existence in the desert. And so this life of luxury and privilege doesn't really correspond with a lot of people's beliefs. So what we see here is a split in the Islamic religion. On one side, you have what are called Sunni Muslims. Sunni Muslims are Muslims who are willing to follow Muhammad's example. However, they're going to accept the Umayyads' rule. The caliph does not need to be a blood relative of Muhammad. They can just be someone who is politically and religiously powerful within the Muslim world. And so there's Sunnis accept the Umayyads' rule and are willing to follow their direction. Shia Muslims go against this. They do not like how the Umayyads are running it. They do not like the Umayyads' luxuriousness and privilege, and they push back. Shias very much say that the caliph should be a direct descendant of Muhammad's. Muhammad is, again, the last of Allah's prophets, so anybody related to him kind of still has that mark of God on them, and so they should be the ones that go and do that. And so that's the major split that we see in the Islamic religion, and that's a split that we still see in today. Now, over time, we're going to see other branches of Islam take off. And so we also see today Sufi Muslims. And the Sufi Muslims are ones who rejected the luxury of the Umayyads and very much believe in a life of poverty and much more of a devotion to spiritual Islam that we don't see in a lot of other either of the other ones. So very much more of the mysticism, spirituality of that. We see a lot of Sufi Muslims in modern day Saudi Arabia. Sunnis are very much the vast majority of Muslims today, but again, we see Shias in a majority in a couple different religions, and this is what explains kind of some of the modern day tensions that you have in the Middle East that again, not so much political, but very much religious. So you can kind of see here the green colors is showing you where we see a large Shiite majority. And the major Shiite country that is in the Middle East today is Iran, where you see a vast 90 to 90% of the Muslims in Iran are Shia Muslims. Well, as you can see, that's very different from the Muslims of the surrounding countries where you can kind of go and see that we have very much a Sunni majority overall, but Iran is a little bit different, which again helps explain a little bit why the Iran today in the political world is doing its own thing, and religion has a lot to go and blame it. And again, if you start to get into one of the reasons with all the problems the United States had when they invaded Iraq following 9/11, is that very much the political and military leaders do not understand this Sunni Shiite divide. As you can kind of very much see that Iraq has a Shiite majority, but Saddam Hussein and his ruling power put Sunni Muslims in charge. So you have a Shiite majority in Iraq being ruled by a Sunni minority, which is also being the problems by Saddam Hussein, and the United States just kind of interjects and puts itself in there and very much makes a big mess of a already tense political situation, which again helps explain why that didn't go real great for the United States when they showed up there. As we move through the history of Islam, by 750, the Abbasids family becomes and takes over the Muslim empire. In 762, they're going to move the capital of the Muslim world from Damascus to Baghdad. And Baghdad, again, has been a major city going all the way back to the earliest times of Mesopotamia. And again, why it's been such a big deal for such a long time is its key location on many trade routes. And Baghdad becomes very much a central hub for Islam for a very long time in the religion's history. The Abbasids, like we saw with Augustus in the Roman Empire, creates a strong civil service and a strong bureaucracy to be able to conduct affairs of not only their empire that they control over the Middle East, but to help also be able to run the larger affairs of the larger Muslim world. Well, if the Abbasids are taking over the Muslim empire in the Middle East, that means the Umayyads get kicked out. They go and they flee to Spain and they set up their caliphate in there. From Spain, these Islamic armies, these Berbers from North Africa, meeting up with the Muslims in Spain, actually keep going. They march into modern day France, march towards Paris, and then in our next unit of study, we'll see if they get to Paris or what keeps Paris and possibly the rest of Western Europe from becoming Islamic and not remaining Christian. The Umayyads are going to establish a state of what's called Al-Andalus in southern Spain, and this is a Muslim state that's going to very much kick most of the Christians out of Spain. They're pretty much going to stay in, say, Catalonia in Barcelona, or being pushed up towards Castile in the north. And we'll see for the next, call it, 1,000 years, we'll see the Muslims being slowly pushed out of Spain by Catholic conquest, but we'll talk about that for another day. Smaller Muslim states are also going to pop up as well. You have the Fatimid Caliphate begins in North Africa that begins to spread to Western Arabia and Syria. And as we move towards, again, in about the year 1000 and the year 1100 with the Crusades, why are the Crusaders able to kind of interject themselves into this area? Because you can already see the Muslim world over time has already begun to split between Sunnis and Shiites. They're beginning to split politically between the Abbasids, the Umayyads, and the Fatimids, and that kind of playing off of all these different Muslim groups in the Middle East is what's allowed these European crusaders to kind of weasel their way in there. So this is what the state of Al-Andalus is going to look like in southern Spain. And so there's going to create a Muslim world on top of the Catholic and Roman world that's already been there in Spain, and which is going to give Spain a very much a different flavor than the rest of Europe because of its time spent under Islamic Muslim rule. As we take a big picture and step back, we can very much see the states of again, the Muslims are smack dab in this giant trading network between Africa, Europe, and Asia, which is going to allow them to be able to remain politically powerful for a very long time, even up into today.